adjustments here. Just get this at a point where you guys can see everything that I'm painting. This is just finishing up. So you guys are going to have to forgive me. There's not going to be a lot of chat today, just a little bit as I go along. And we're going to be finishing some things up all through here. I think the biggest thing that we're going to touch on today is let's get this knocked out right here. So that's one we'll get knocked out. All right, let's see. All right, hang on one second here while we take a look. All right. All right, let's get started on this candle. Well, candles, most important thing about them. First thing you need to do is you need to white everything up, because none of your other colors are going to show up over top of that background color that we've got if you don't get a whitewash in there. So start whitewashing everything, get the angle and everything on your... Oh boy, that is a lot of paint. Yeah, we're a little bit thick and fat on this. I ended up having a migraine this morning, so I don't know if the painting will turn out great. If not, great thing about paint, you can always go back over top of it. So we're just going to get a couple of things set here, get part of the sconce ready. I think I'll probably make the sconce gold since I don't have any other gold anywhere throughout the painting. So a lot of this is just called blocking in. Blocking in's important. It's what gets you to a point where you can start painting, really. So, all right. Like I said, I don't know much. I don't know if the chat's going to be great today. I won't be going through and saying an awful lot. I'll try and say hello to everyone as they pop in. Right now, we haven't got anyone that's popped in, and that's kind of okay by me for so far. All right. Let's start working on some hair, shall we? Or fur in this case. Hair, fur, it's going to be one or the other. This guy, I was a little bit, I didn't know exactly how I wanted to get this guy's fur or hair done. So when I get to a point where I'm doing this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some transparent burnt umber and I'm going to take some titanium white. I've already got all of the background so that when I start going over it and I add the details to his hair or his fur, it's going to end up giving me plenty of depth. Now, you have to have that depth or it's just not going to work. When you add depth, make sure that you understand where your light sources are coming from. This one's one of those paintings where I got overly ambitious. I've got a tiny light source here, and then I'm going to have a major light source coming this direction. So, sometimes you bite off a little more than you can chew. Let's see if this is going to be one of those times. I'm going to mix up a little bit of Payne's Gray, some transparent burnt umber, and some titanium white. And we're just going to start coming in and picking out the details for the hair. We're using a really fine brush. We want to just kind of give him some shape and flow real fast. We want it to be wet, but not so wet that you can't do anything with it. There might even be times where I'm just going to drag it right across the ear because I can fix the ear later. Don't be afraid to do that kind of things with your paintings. If you get to a point where, yes, I did draw that. Thank you, Mr. Turtle. And like I said, this painting is just finishing up. So you get to see some of the last touches that go into it. And those final touches are pretty important. They're really what give you the maximum amount of contrast. And that contrast is really what's important because without contrast, you're not going to have any kind of form. You'll just have shape. And as I've said before, when I give some of these lessons or when I'm painting live, shape is two-dimensional. It's flat. So if you ever say to your girlfriend, hey, you've got a great shape, well, that's not a very good that's not a very good compliment at all. You're just saying that she's pretty darn flat. But if you tell her she's got great form, hey, that's a different thing altogether. So let's just bring in a little here. This is going to be a weird area because right here it's going to curve in. So I can't really add any kind of highlights into this area because that's going to be super dark. And then it's going to disappear over here. But I also have to remember that I've got this light shining down this way. That's not going to affect this area at all, but it will affect the top areas and just a few of the spots that kind of stick out. So, all right, let's just get on to it. We're just using really flowy brush strokes at this moment, just to get an indication of the fur. Maybe we'll get a little bit that just kind of curls up. He's got wild hair, fur. I'm not sure exactly what he's got. I think we're going to call it hair. It seems like it's feeling more like hair to me. Okay, we're going to leave that to dry for just a minute. We're going to take a look up here. Okay, the candle's still a little bit tacky, so we can't jump into that. You wish you could draw like this. Well, you know, drawing and painting, it took a long time to get to this point. All you've got to do is keep on focused on it, and then you'll be able to get it done that way. Let's do this. I think I want to add a nice, brilliant yellow highlight to some of these areas and fix up part of what I just went over top. So let's come over here. And you see you can fix your ear just by going over top of it. Any of the areas that you'd already brought that flow across, just paint them in. You're painting with acrylic paint, and acrylic paint is going to be start doodling and don't stop, Mr. Turtle. That's right, Emily. That's exactly what you do. I'm going to take and fix that before that ends up rolling into my armor. I mean, I could go ahead and go over top of it, but the semi-transparent paint that I use through this armor would give me a much bigger hassle if I was trying to get rid of some brown and work it in. So always keep an eye on all the parts of your painting, guys. Now, let's see. Oh, we were going to get over here and mix up some bright yellow highlight where we've got the candle light kind of shining onto our ogre or orc or whatever we've got in the background. So we've got to kind of figure out how that's going to hit. Because like I said, I've got two different light sources. I have this light source, and then I've got a light source that's coming this way. And that is a pretty ambitious thing to do, is to put two light sources in. In fact, on some level or another, I'm kind of regretting it, but it's still going to work out okay. Okay, I'm just touching up in a couple of spots here. I really like the way that's working. That's giving me a good bright yellow highlight. But now we've got to fix the rest of the ear where I brought the flow of the hair over top. So let's get into doing that. I'm going to switch over to my trusty makeup brushes. I love my makeup brushes. They work really well. I do not have any permanent black on my palette right now. So why don't we get some permanent black put in there real quick in just a spot. And let's show you guys what I use for a palette. Because this is one of the best things that I've ever found for using for acrylic paint. It's just a utensil drawer insert that I get from the dollar store. These cost me $1. I have 5 of them inside the studio in varying stages of drying paint. And then it's really easy to get the paint off of them because once it dries, you just peel it up because it's just plastic. All right, let's go back to what we were doing, get a little bit of permanent black, tiny bit of blue, and then we're just going to paint that out inside the shadow. I want to use the makeup brush because the makeup brush gives me a flow that you don't get in other ways. It's also going to allow me to bring that same thing down for my shadows while I have it. And it looks really, really wet. When it dries, it'll dry a little bit more matte instead of flashy finish. So instead of being gloss, it'll dry matte. That's a good thing. Let's just bring a little bit there. And as you can see, you can use these makeup brushes for a wide variety of techniques. The way that I like to use them is for the purpose that they were invented for faces. I use them for almost all of the things that I do to faces. I also end up using them for hair because they will take and they're meant for shaping. They're meant for taking and allowing you to do things that bring forth the natural contours of a face. So if you use them for that purpose when you're painting, what you're going to get is you're going to get a real nice flow and smooth, and it contours. Well, that gives you the opportunity to be a professional liar, which is what we are as artists. I tell people all the time that a two-dimensional object looks like it's 3D. So the makeup brushes are a big help in doing that. Now, I still have some of those little strands showing up inside here, and I just brought them across the ear. So I'm just going to go in with a finer brush. I'm going to pick out some details and get some shading going on. Maybe get some spots where there's cracks in the ear, much like what I've done down on the face. And then if I've got extra paint on the brush, I'll just use it to bring through the hair. The hair gives me a nice contour at that point. And if I feel like I need more, if I feel like what I've got there isn't shadowed enough, I can pop through and then move the paint that I just put on, and it'll bring a little bit of shadow right down here. And that shadow's semi-transparent when it pulls across with a makeup brush. So that's a good way to do it. Now, I need Payne's Gray. I haven't got that in my palette right now. So let's just take some Payne's Gray, and I will show you guys why Payne's Gray is such a fantastic... Wait, is that Payne's Gray? Yes, that's the Payne's Gray. I had to double check. I don't want to put any of my metallics in right now. I have an entire mixture of metallic paint sitting in there in 2 different tones, and I'm going to use that primarily for the armor. And it's only got a slight sheen to it, and that's good. All right, so Payne's Gray. When I pull it across these areas, the semi-transparent quality of Payne's Gray will allow me to get a natural shadow without overpowering things. It'll also allow me to move that in. Those teeth right there aren't going to have a lot of highlight. If you're just tuning in, we do want to point out that we've got 2 different light sources we're using in here. We have one light source coming this way and one light source that's coming this way. This will be a minor light source. This will be the major one. So this area of the armor and this area right here are going to have some brilliant highlights, while this area of the armor and this area here are going to have some kind of mellow, toned down highlights. Okay, I'm just going to use some more of that Payne's Gray right through here. It's going to allow me to contour using the makeup brush. He's really got a deep smile line there. Those teeth are not going to stay brilliant white. I'm going to go in and I'm going to change those teeth. I'm going to yellow them up just a little bit. And that's an important aspect. And I'm probably, once I get my candle done, going to add some yellow highlights along different areas in here. The candle doesn't need to be done yet. The fur looks really nice. I like the way that it just kind of sits in the background. But let's touch where I was working on the candle. You know what? Why don't we just jump in and do the candle as it is anyway? Why not? I need a different brush for that. And of course, I haven't cleaned it well enough. This is one of my old ovals. This thing is brutalized like crazy. It's been with me for about 3 to 4 seasons. And because of that, it is separated like crazy. I want you guys to see that. That separation ends up giving me a lot of different drag marks that I like. In this case, we're going to mix some yellow ochre with some medium yellow and then a little bit of titanium white. And it's going to come over here and we're just going to block it in over top. We can cover a lot of area with this brush. I want to cover a lot of area with this brush. By no means is it going to end up being that brilliant yellow when we're done. That is just so that it gets blocked in and we need to let it dry. There's so many layers and leveling that you need to do to all of these different brushes and these different paintings. Let's pop back in him, and we've already got a little bit of our yellow mixed up. Let's touch it with our green, and then we're just going to give him some highlights along the leading edge there. We'll go along this little area that we've made for a, well, kind of craggy lines. Touch there. You got to remember, where would the highlight possibly hit? Only the areas that would sit out a little further from the hair. So that's the only area. So it's not going to hit here. It's not going to hit over here. This secondary light's going to hit there and there only. And then as long as we've got some yellow, let's go ahead and touch it in on the, see, we'll get more yellow ochre. We'll mix it with some titanium white. We'll mix it through what we already had as our burnt sienna, our white, and a touch of Payne's gray that we already had for the hair. And we're just going to add some highlight lines along the hair, just where it's going to shine. We already know where the highlights of the hair are because we put them in earlier. So this just allows us to pick up where this is going to hit it with the candlelight. A little over there. And yeah, it's starting to mix it up, coming through just fine for us. Let's do a little bit more. I had to pick up some more paint. Maybe just a little here. I'm not too worried if I get some really wild lines here because, well, let's face it, this guy's hair is really wild as it is. And of course, again, we have the light coming, the major light coming from the other way. And we have a lot of depth to his hair now. Not quite as much as I want up here. I want just a little bit more. And I want that to go above and beyond that one. And then if you seem to think that you've gotten some in there and it doesn't feel quite right, bring in your makeup brush and soften the edges of it. The makeup brushes have a natural tendency to do some drag for you. That drag works out real nicely. And there we go. I'm pretty much happy with where his hair and his fur is. I don't think I need to add anything more. We've got enough contrast coming in all of the different areas to give us form. That's all we need. All right, let's see. Let's go back up to, is this still wet? It's tacky, but it's not wet. Oh, we dipped into some black somehow. Hey, this is a good opportunity to show you that when you do end up getting something like that, you can just work it in. So I'm just going to use that to give me kind of the candle area. And I want to bring it over here. It'll give me some natural shadow when I need it in different places. Now, if this is the low end of the candle, that means the wind's blowing this way. And that means that your flame's going to curl up. So it's blowing this way. The top of your flame's going to be over here. Now I kind of messed it up, but I'm going to get some black and paint that out real fast so that you can get it. So the body of your candle will flex this way, but the tip of your candle will flex the other way. So that's just the way that the wind is going to move it. That's your flame that we're talking about. So there, and we've got that worked in. Let's get the appropriate colors for a candle. Candle's not going to be yellow. It's not going to be white. It's going to have a wide variety of colors all the way through it, inside and outside of it. The top of the candle is going to be your coolest. That's actually going to be your red part of your flame, and your orange part of your flame is up at the top. A white blue is actually going to be the hottest part of your flame. And I like that. We're going to move that down through here, and then I'll work that in with some of the other paint that I add. And let's add some of that paint right now. I want to get my yellow ochre. Well, always make sure you don't have any kind of paint on your fingers. I'm not really worried that it ended up over here because I can just move it out. It's in the dark areas. If it was light, I'd have to immediately go in with a lighter type of brush and then try and pull it out. Now, since the wind is pushing this way, this is going to be the top end of your candle. This will be the low end. Make sure you're aware of how those things move in and out and together. And it requires a lot of layering through these areas. You can already start to see that the candle is getting to look a lot more like a candle. That's because those layers of paint upon paint upon paint are starting to work their magic and do what they're supposed to do. Now I'm using a fine brush right now that's got a lot of separation because I've brutalized the brush. I like that because it's pulling. Now the only drawback is it's a rather hard brush, so it's going to pick up some of the paint from underneath it. So switch back over to a softer brush and mix right on your canvas, and it'll take those areas where it was picking up the paint and it'll lay it back down and mix it for you. Again, the wind is coming this way, so this will be the low end of the candle. This is the high end. The body of the flame will flex out this way. The tip will go off that way. It's not done by any means at all. There is a lot of stuff left that needs to go into this. You've got to layer a candle just right for a long time before you finally have it the way you want it. And sometimes you have to exercise patience. And then that patience, you have to exercise that in order to move on to something else and then come back to what you're working on a little later. Patience, right. How long will that take? Okay, we're going to leave the candle for just a minute. We're going to move on to another aspect of the painting. We're pretty happy with him, but I think that red in his eye needs to have a little bit of a vibrancy in a highlight area. So I'm going to bring in some brilliant red. I'm going to grab my super fine brush, if I can find it. Oh, found it. It was in the mixing water. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys have not already liked and subscribed to the channel, please do so. I have a little over 140 paintings that I've done live, and each one of these is inside. It's on a card inside the card game I Magi Kingdom of Thor card game. What we're doing is we're just adding a little bit of highlight to that eye for our little ghoul or our goblin or orc or whatever he is. I haven't decided yet. I've got an author friend of mine who was saying something pretty darn funny. You know, while I've got some yellow mixed up, I've got some yellow ochre. I'm going to mix some yellow ochre with a little bit of my titanium white and a tiny bit of my transparent burnt umber. And I'm going to show you what you really need to do to these teeth. This dude doesn't have a dentist, right? So he's not going to have brilliantly amazing teeth. They're going to be yellowed. They're going to be brutalized. They're going to have cavities. Well, as much as I guess this guy has cavities, maybe that's why he's an unhappy dude. All right. He'll make a great card inside the card game I Magi Kingdom of Thor, because all of my paintings end up going onto those. I think we want to get a little bit more white in there, but then mix that with just a bit of our transparent burnt umber. It's going to give us a brown white, much like what we used up here in the hair, the fur. And we're going to mix that in with our yellow. And our teeth on this guy are going to not be as brilliantly white and take up a lot of the attention. We don't want them to take up a lot of the attention. They're not supposed to take up attention. You need to know when you're doing this, one, where are your light sources? I have two in this one. I have the candle as a small one, so that is my secondary light source. My primary light source will be coming from here, so maybe they're walking through a cave or a cavern and there's something that shows natural light coming that way. You always get paint everywhere on you when you're painting. I mean, you don't always. I've seen some guys that are so fastidious about the way they do it. That's not me, though. I'm not fastidious. Fastidious. Yeah, the one that I said earlier. Go with that. All right, I'm going to take some permanent black with my super fine brush, and I'm going to get some striated lines through his eye there. And then I'm also going to take and darken up just some areas here, give some more crag lines in there. And I need to have that super, super dark before I put my highlight in his eye. Now, I've already got the highlight in this guy right there, which means we already know where the highlight's got to be on him. So we'll get some titanium white. Let's put in a highlight. There. Okay. That's all it takes. Doesn't have to be a lot inside that eye, just a little bit. That's going to be the brightest, most vibrant area of that part of the painting is the highlight in his eye. I think I do want to get just a little bit better highlight through here on his hair, his fur. I'm going to get a lot of titanium white and just an itty bitty bit of my transparent burnt umber. And I'm going to add that highlight through where the candle is hitting, and that's going to give me some more contrast. Contrast is probably the key to almost all of my paintings because it's important to know where light's moving and how it's hitting each part of my characters. And I have the two different light sources, the one from above and then a big one that's coming in from the side. So this is my secondary light source. That gives us some great contrast. Let's now move over to the candle again. When you're doing your candle, the tip of your candle is going to be the coolest part of your candle. That's actually going to be your red. And if the wind is moving this way, the body of the candle will move off this way, the tip will move up that way and curl. And the outside of the flame is going to be very cool. The inside of the flame is going to be bright white, except for right in the middle of it, right here, we're going to take and just get a little bit of permanent black. We're going to make the candle wick. You're going to see it right smack dab in the center. Maybe a little bit thicker. And I need to let that dry before I add the blue around it, because you will have on your candle, the center of your candle is going to be blue. It's super hot right there. And that needs to dry for a second, but that gives us an opportunity to take some transparent burnt umber and some yellow ochre and add the lines underneath where the candle's melting on the actual candle sconce. And then down here at the bottom, it's a little bit more brown as well. Mix that in. If it seems too much, you can always go back over top of it. And it does seem a little bit too much, so I'm going to grab a brush that I love to use for mixing. It's this itty bitty little flat chisel brush. I'm going to get a little wet, and I'm going to pull that paint. And I'm going to make that paint mix right on the canvas for where the candle is. And we're going to get a better form. Now remember, I have a light source coming from over here, so this side of the candle is going to be brighter than this side. So I can end up putting that side in some more shadow in just a second. Get a little more water on that for mixing and pulling paint. Okay, now we're starting to get a really good feel for how our candle fits and hits. We're going to have a leading edge that's going to be brilliant white right here because the candle itself is the thing that's highlighting that. And then I'm going to have a secondary one right along here because my major light source coming that way is on it. Okay. All right, our candle's looking pretty good. Why don't we add that blue that we needed to add? In order to do that, you've got to get the right color of blue. I'm going to use a sky blue, and I only need to take and put a dab on it, so I don't actually need to put that dab on my easel. I can just end up putting it right there on the back of my, or sorry, I don't need to put it in my palette. I can put it on the back of my easel. You guys knew what I meant, right? Okay. Glad we're all following along on this. If you have not already liked and subscribed, please do so. You guys are the ones that keep me painting. Take a look at my description if you end up wanting to purchase a painting. People who decide to buy my paintings that are part of my YouTube channel get a discount on them before I end up taking them to any kind of a convention. Now, I have a little over 60 paintings inside my studio right now. Most of those paintings are going to RadCon with me. RadCon's a convention that is in Pasco, Washington. If you're anywhere near there or you're going to be at that event, please come by and tell me that you saw me on my YouTube channel. I love that, and I will have a little something to give you if you do that. Okay, if I get too much paint, I just end up pulling it across the backside of my easel. That blue that's in there can't be too overpowering. And the red on the edge can't be too overpowering either. So you really want to grab a little bit of orange. I'm just going to use this same brush. And I'm going to point something out. When you've got these brushes, grab the ferrule, which is this area, and pull any excess water off. Otherwise, it's going to roll down onto your painting. So add our orange along here. Okay, that's looking good. All right. Now the candle sconce, I thought I was going to end up doing the candle sconce in a gold, but I really don't want to. Now that I see the color that I have for my candle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in the same mixture that I've got for the steel. That way I'll have a comparison on the two. So let's just move over and start doing that for the steel right now. First thing I'm going to do is I've got a mixture right here for the steel that's got Payne's gray, it's got phthalo blue, a little bit of sky blue, and it has some pearlized blue and black. That pearlized blue and black is going to give me a little bit of a metallic sheen. So we're going to pull this down. It's going to go right over top of the white. The sconce is going to disappear out this way. I'm not worried about covering up some of my detail lines right now because I know where they're at. I'll go in and put them in a little bit later. I'm just going to block this in. And having that white that's already there is going to help out a lot. Now, this paint is mostly transparent here. And it's going to have to dry before I can add any more details to it. That's okay. It gives me the opportunity to move to something else. I'm happy with the way this guy looks. Well, except for one little detail here. I still have a couple of drag marks of where I brought the fur or the hair out along it. I'm going to add those, a little bit of permanent black in there. Get a little bit more shaping going on and some shadow. I'm being really delicate with the way that I put the black in. I don't want to layered in too much. That's why I'm using one of my favorite brushes, this little oval flat. It has a drag quality to it that I just can't get anywhere else, and that drag quality is because the brush is so old, it's ended up separating a lot. And I like that quite a bit. And we're going to pull some through here and there. And it gives me a little bit more shadow down on this piece. So once you know what your brushes do and you have excess paint on it, you can end up pulling that excess paint a lot. All right, I'm happy with him. I'm not going to touch him anymore. I'm not going to play around with what's going to end up with the highlights in here, some things that show other parts of the dungeon. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over here and I'm going to work on the armor. Now, my pauldron for the shoulder looks pretty good. We're not going to touch that right now. Let's instead work on the helmet. This ultra bright area really needs to be taken out fast. It's just too much. So we're going to put some paint over top of it and let that paint dry. And then when we get ready to do more details, I'll bring in the colors for it. Now, I'm going to take a mixture of my white that I've already got. Not my white, sorry, my armor that I've already got. I'm going to use the same brush that I was using before to bring it in. That brush gives me a really smooth outer line. And then when I want it to pull and separate, I use the broad part of the brush. So I use the edge of the brush here. I'm using the broad part of the brush to pull here for that separation. And I'm going to have some little drags that come into the armor. Maybe later I'll even put in some marks on the armor that show that it's been in battle. But right now I'm going to move back over to my makeup brushes. You guys hear me use the makeup brushes all the time. These makeup brushes are just brilliant for smoothing things out. And they give you the ability to move paint in a way that a regular brush just doesn't do it. This is the low light area, so I don't need a ton of light through here. I can pull just like this as though the hammered armor has a natural grain to it. In fact, I kind of like the way that's working, so I'll pull that in. Got to smooth this down a little bit. Maybe he's got some denting in there, just enough that it just picks up a weird way that the light hits. That's okay. That's good right there. I'm happy with that on the armor. Let's move back over to another part of the armor. This piece is done. I don't need to touch this area anymore, except for maybe to put some more shadows in here and maybe some hard lines. A lot of artists will tell you to never do any kind of hard lines. Look, hard lines work. Maybe they don't work for certain artists. They work plenty fine for me. Okay, this is the circular hinge that's holding the visor on. So we want to get just a look of that going on here before I move on. I'm going to get rid of some of that vibrancy by dipping back into my super dark area of my armor. And then I'll use it to just mix. I love this brush. I'll use it to just mix right there on my canvas. Now, there's an area right here that seems way too light. I'm just going to come in with a hard black line later and cover that over. And I don't need to really do much more to that area right now. There's layer upon layer upon layer when you do these things. There's lots of layering, and you have to get used to the fact that you're going to layer it, and you have to get used to the fact that you're layering. Sometimes you can't work as fast on one section of the painting as you'd like to. You have to work on the others. That looks pretty nice. All right, let's move on to another area. This area of the armor is a fold inside it. It's probably the same piece as this one before these pieces are put over top. So we're just going to make it dark. I may come in and add just a little bit of a highlight in the area right here, but it'll be very, very mellowed out. So I don't even know if I could call it a highlight. It'll be a mid-tone. But right now, I just want to get that one darkened in. A lot of this is just blocking the stuff in so that I can end up knowing where it's at later. This corner right here is going to be probably the darkest area of the armor. So I'm really going to go straight into some permanent black. This part of the visor isn't going to be picking up any kind of light at all. It's going to be dark, dark, dark because it's being hidden by this. In fact, we'll darken up the lower end of that. This area of the armor is going to pick up some pretty good highlights straight from the candle. It's not going to get anything from our major light source that's going to be on this side, but it is going to pick up some of the candle, which means once I end up putting it in, I'm going to bring in a light yellow tone and put it over top of that. I can't do it right now because this blue tinge, I'd end up getting green. I don't want green right now. Now, let's move into this part of the armor. The light should hit right about there. Pull along there, and we'll just feather it in. Now, if it seems too bright, that's okay. We can always go over top of it with a little bit of a darker color. And in fact, that's what we'll do right here. We'll get more of my mixture that I've already made for my armor. We'll use this brush and its natural tendency to leave drag marks to mix right on my canvas. Armor takes a lot of layering to get it done just right. A painting like this, if I were not doing any kind of a narration on it, 16 by 20 with this kind of thing would probably take me about 5.5 hours to get done. And that's good because 5.5 hours still is inside what I call my money-making time frame. Because as a professional artist, if I can't paint fast enough and I spend too much time on a painting, I'll never be able to recoup all of my expenses and my time from it. And if you're a professional artist, you have to concern yourself with those things. Okay, let's take and we're going to dip right into our makeup brushes again. We're going to pull this line straight there. All right, our visor is starting to come in fairly well now. The makeup brush does a lot of the work for me that I need. It's going to leave little drag marks in the right spots. We'll even come over here and do a little bit of it. We still haven't touched this or this. And we haven't touched this area much at all. And we still need to do the pauldron and then the chainmail, then all of these things down here. So there's lots left to do on this painting. I know that not everyone can sit around and join me for the entire painting. Those people that can, I sure do appreciate your company. Thanks for coming by. Always like and subscribe so you guys can follow along when I end up doing others. There are some of my paintings you will end up having a spot where I start with an outline on my canvas. You guys can order the outline on a full-size canvas. So it's a print that I would send to you, and then you can paint along with it. And this is where we're going to stop for right now because I did have someone who just came into my studio. But thanks for tuning in for where we're at so far. I'm going to open this back up for another live painting later on where I finish up the pauldron, I finish up the armor, and I finish up these areas. But so far, that's where we're at. Thanks for tuning in, guys.